Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Right Think with me, David Curtin. And I have a fantastic guest on the show today who is being active in standing for elections at the moment. Now, I'm sure if you watch this channel, there are local elections going on in England all over the place at the moment. So I am joined today by Mia Molinaro, who is standing in the local elections in a local area in Hertfordshire. Mia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. And thank you for calling me a fantastic guest. That's the first, but yeah, thank you very much.
No, you are. I know, because you're experienced in politics. I know you don't think you are, but you have already been a parish councillor for a while.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that? How long have you been a parish councillor? What is that? And what's it like being a parish councillor?
Oh, wow. I'm not experienced in politics per se, but I've been a parish councillor since about 2018. I moved into my area 2015, and I'm a committed Christian, so service is part of that culture. And after getting to know the place, I thought, right, it's time for me to get stuck in somewhere. And I had been listening to some of the talk about grooming gangs that far back, and thought, I want to be involved in politics. I want to get to know my area and make sure I'm there to get involved in case anything like that is heard of here. Of course, not realizing that being a parish councillor is totally apolitical. It's the lowest rung of government. I didn't know this at the time. So I applied, I was interviewed to be a parish councillor here. And it was a real eye-opener. And actually, I'm really blessed to have joined, because I'm working with such an amazing group of people. It really has restored my faith in local government. They're such hardworking volunteers. They give so much of their time and effort. And I really did learn a lot working with them, and I'm still with them. I joined the amenities committee, and that meets once every 3 months. We meet as a parish once every month. But I also joined planning, because I feel how people live, where people live, really affects society and how they behave. And I felt planning was the right area. And that's a lot more work, because you have to meet once every 2 weeks and you prepare for it in advance. So I joined planning, and it's been a very steep learning curve for someone like me. I'm only in a small family-run business. I don't know anything of politics or drawing or architecture or anything like that, but I very much enjoyed it. And now it feels very, timely, because there's so much going on with the infrastructure bill and the climate change, and it's starting to affect us as a community and what goes on here. So I'm actually really glad that I've started in that area, and I'm still here. I'm still in the parish council.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, like you say, it's a level that actually a lot of people have never heard of, because we got the elections going on at the moment. There's a lot of media coverage of these things in England, because some of the elections were cancelled in some counties, not your county, but that's for the county council, and then there's a district level, and the parish level is underneath that. But so it doesn't get much attention, but I think it is still very important, because it is the most local level of government that you can have and you can get. And like you say, planning is something that is central to local government, because they decide what houses can be built, what goes on with the farmland, and so on. I mean, what are the issues with planning where you are? Because you're in a fairly rural area, but what's going on there with planning in your area?
Well, we've noticed in the last year or so, really, a dramatic increase in the number of developers approaching us to build in the area. Now, we are a rural district. There is some farmland around us, and there's lots of greenbelt land around us. And the developers have obviously got their eyes set on the area. And it's difficult as a parish councillor, because you're not meant to get your personal feelings involved. You're meant to consider the positions of all parties. So you look at the need for housing, and you look at the need to protect the green belt. The problem is, once a green belt has gone, it's gone forever. So the decision making gets quite tough. and it's really hard to stay focused and in the middle. And the other issue, of course, which brings in government's other policies, is the fact that housing need is also determined by things like mass migration. It isn't just the fact that we're all breeding and having loads of children and therefore we need more houses, because that's not actually the case. So it's hard because you're constantly weighing up numbers with competing policies in the government. And unfortunately, being the lowest form of government, we don't have much say. But the public has to have somebody representing them. And so we're that first line, we're that first body that the public can come to and say, look, there's someone building 10 houses next to me. What can I do about this? And then it's for you to represent their wishes. But you are restricted. You can only use the national policy and planning framework. So you have parameters. Unfortunately, everyone thinks that you can just shout out whatever it is your personal opinions are, and that's how it's done. It's not. You've got very restricted parameters. And then what we say as statutory consultees goes on to the Borough Council, and they make the final decision. And then it goes to appeal.
That's the thing, isn't it? Yeah. It's like, it's really good that you can represent local people, but actually it's the boroughs and the districts that make the final decisions over planning. And actually sometimes they get overruled themselves by the central government because of that thing you said, the national planning policy framework, which I think is dreadful. It should be got rid of completely, because it requires all the districts and boroughs and unitary authorities to build certain numbers of homes every year in their district. So if the government says, oh, you've got to build 1,000 homes in your area, they're almost legally required to do it. I mean, they might not do it every year. I would try to stop it, but the government says, well, you have to. It's dreadful. And
it is. It's really difficult.
Get rid of it. What do you think about this framework? Is it?
Yeah, I can see that there are some benefits, and I suppose there have to be some guidelines that you work towards. But the problem is those with lots of money, which tends to be the developers, not the parish councils. They work on a preset. They're given a small set amount of money. Those with a lot of money can keep appealing and making grounds and sending in bigwig barristers to defend their cause. And it becomes very hard when you're only using one document to defend your position. That I have found a real challenge, and we did defend, and thank God successfully, last year, the development of 125 properties on a patch of beautiful greenbelt land next to ancient woodland. So it really is important that the public has a voice and has a say, and residents can defend their homes. I mean, you as a science teacher, chemist, will know how animals behave when their communities are too tightly packed and they're competing for resources. The aggression goes up, their societies break down. Well, I think it's very similar to us humans. We live best when we can take care of our community and where we live, and have pride in our environments. And when you pack everyone tightly together, one person doesn't know their neighbour to the left or to the right. And when there are so many of you living on top of each other, it spells disaster for a well-functioning community. So I think that planning is really, it's underrated in terms of importance for cohesive society.
What you said there, Mira, just brings up another question, because you said they were going to build 125 new homes in this rural area, Greenbelt area. And I know it well, actually. I must confess, I did used to work in your area, very, very close to where you're talking about. So I know that
area. So you do know it?
I know it very, very well, actually, because I lived there for 2 years, lived and worked there for 2 years. It's a beautiful part of the countryside near London. But the question is that, would these homes be for local people, or would they be for somebody else?
Well, you know, in the NPPF, you're told you have to have X percentage for social housing, X percentage for 3 to 4 bedrooms, and what have you. But the truth of the matter is that the prices are going to be set according to whatever that location warrants. And so the local people, or the kids of the local people, will very rarely have an opportunity to buy there, because I know for the up the road where they're hoping to have another development, but where the prices don't start until £500-600 for a fairly small one. Who's going to be able to afford that? So actually, it isn't going to be local people. What's going to happen is people will move here from outside, putting more pressure on the local facilities, because they're not going to increase. The doctor's surgeries aren't increasing. We're not going to have any additional travel. They keep talking about sustainable travel arrangements, which means walk everywhere, but it's not possible out here. We're not in London. Over here, to get to the local shops, you know, it might be a substantial walk. So
I think that's an issue, actually, because a lot of these people who think, oh, sustainability, you know, what does that mean? And they live in London, where there's a red London bus coming by every 2 minutes. But you don't have to go too far out of London where you are in the green belt, and it's very, very rural, and there is hardly any bus service there. You know, you can't. You have to walk. And the people there who are making all of these pronouncements and decrees just don't understand what it's like, even if you live just a few miles away from a town and you just can't get around, and they say, sustainable travel, that means walking and cycling.
I mean, we have one bus service once every hour that comes through. My mum's in her 80s now. If she wanted to go anywhere, number one, she'd be restricted to holding one shopping bag. And she'd have to wait for an hour. If she misses that, she has to stand around for another hour before the next bus comes. Or she could try and take the train. Now, our train station has got metallic stairs. We don't have a lift. She'd have to go up, very sharp incline, walk across and get down to the other side. That's not going to be possible for any elderly people. It's going to be difficult for a mum with a buggy, and forget it if you're disabled. So some of these developments appear to me to be clearly profit making, and they really don't take into account the community that lives there. And I feel that for any of your listeners, we really need to get involved. If I could encourage anyone, it would be, please get active in your local community. I'm not saying sign up to any party. You don't have to stand as a candidate, but get involved in your community. We need more voices. We need to let these councils know and our MPs know how we feel about the areas where we live. And I'm actually really bored of hearing about NIMBYism, not in my backyard, because actually I feel, no, we should all be concerned about what goes on in our backyard. We should all care about our community, how we all live, how our neighbours are doing. And if we all cared a little bit more, I think our society would be very different.
Yeah, I mean, this accusation of NIMBYism really is a smear, because all it is people are concerned to conserve the beauty and the peace and the history and the heritage of their local communities. That's all it is. And you don't want a massive housing development plonked next to a historic village, because it will completely change the character of that village, especially like they're doing in many places, is getting an old disused airbase or whatever, or, you know, some facility, and then busing in hundreds and hundreds of migrants. You know, that's not happening in your area, but it is happening in many places around the UK and other countries. And it's absolutely horrific for the people who live there. So to call people NIMBYs because they don't want things in their areas, they're actually being good stewards of their areas.
I totally agree.
Bad accusation.
Totally agree. And one thing that people forget is the impact of green spaces, open spaces, during the COVID period. How important it was for people to get out and get some sunshine and get into the open areas. If we deprive our children and our grandchildren of such places, where on earth will they go? What will they do? If you don't have a backyard, if you don't have gardens and what have you, where are these people supposed to go for peace and recuperation? It's so important.
Yeah, so it's very,
And
very difficult. Yeah.
yeah.
What? So let's move on to talk more about the local elections that are going on. And from the time of recording this, it's only 3 weeks away. So people have been preparing. Candidates like you have been preparing for a long time. But now you're in the campaign period. How is it? Have you spoken to people who are voting? What do people think about the current political situation? Labour, the Tories, Lib Dems, Greens, Heritage Party that I'm in, you're standing for, etc. What do people think?
Gosh, where do I start? I think universally, I'd say everyone is very fed up. People are struggling financially. People are struggling to make sense of some of what they see going on, talking about justice and sentencing and what have you.
Yeah.
I think people are completely let down by the Labour government, those that were Labour before, and the Tory government as well. And they do acknowledge that the Tories have been responsible for bringing us to this point, and Labour have just made it 100 times worse. Yeah. I think a few months back, I'd say there was a lot of hope in reform. But with the increase in squabbling within the party, people have now, I feel a lot of people have given up. And they've become very apathetic. And I think that's a really dangerous place for people to be in a country. The more people get involved, and then more say they'll have in changing things. If we all become apathetic and sit back, then anything can happen. I mean, that's how Labour got in, quite frankly, in the first place, because people weren't involved enough. And they got in with a very small vote, didn't they? So that's been the challenge. I'm speaking to a lot of would-be reform voters that are now having second thoughts, which is good for the Heritage Party.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we have enough time to convince them to change their minds. It's very difficult when you don't have access to mainstream media. A lot of these people seem still to trust the likes of the BBC and what have you. I personally don't. So really they're at the behest of what mainstream media tells them. And because there's so much going on at the moment, I'm wondering if people have just had enough. But those that have heard of us, those that know what we stand for, are very happy to vote for us. So I'm hoping that translates to real votes on the day.
Yeah, I hope so too, Mia, and I hope you get lots of votes, and you can win and you can get in. That would be amazing if you became a county councillor on the day after the election. That would be marvellous.
That would be lovely, that would be lovely,
But
I know we're up against some opposition here. We have got a history of some good, I won't deny, some good people here. So I'm up against it really, but I live in hope.
Yeah, I think people generally tend to vote more for the party rather than the person. I mean, there might be 10 or 20% of votes go to a person because someone really likes an individual, but more often than not, people vote for the party. And I think what you've said is very astute, is that people are done with the Tories and Labour. They've both had a chance. They've both been absolutely dreadful. And my assessment of things is very similar to what you've said, is that people were waiting for somebody to lead them, and they were waiting for Farage to come back. I mean, I wasn't. I didn't think he was, the person to actually do anything of substance at the moment. But they jumped on the bandwagon a little bit back in July, in the last general election, and now they're making a lot of noise in the media. But as you said, people are very, very, perturbed by this infighting that's going on, and they thought that reform was something different. But they're looking at the the behavior of the people there towards each other, and thinking, well, this is just as bad as the Tories and Labour, whoever were, and very disillusioned with them. But I'm so glad that you're standing for the Heritage Party, that obviously I'm in as well, to give people what I think is a real choice, because we're really principled and really have a full, well-constructed, coherent set of policies that will restore our nation, both at national and local level. So it's really good that people are responding well to you there.
And dare I say it, I think our manifesto's got a lot of common sense. And it seems to be lacking in politics in general these days. People need common sense, and the thing about the British people, they're very law-abiding generally. And I think you're right. I think they're looking for a leader to follow, to pull them through. And I think that's why so many had their hopes pinned on Farage. But I'm afraid I'm inclined to agree with Elon Musk's assessment that he just doesn't have what it takes. I think he's shown his colours now. And I feel sorry for those that put their trust in him. It must be heartbreaking, because they probably feel that there's no way out now. But I would like to encourage them to think again, and to look towards the Heritage Party. I know we're small, but we are growing, and we are what I would call a true grassroots movement. And it has to be from the people, not from the elites coming down. That doesn't work.
Indeed, that's absolutely right. Thank you, Mia. I totally agree. And Mia, it's been really fantastic to talk to you today. Just briefly about you standing to be a county councillor and what you do as a parish councillor, and great to leave on a message of hope.
Yes,
people have been let down. There is hope. So,
there is hope.
And get involved as well. So maybe just
definitely.
Before we go, I mean, I'm always encouraging people not just to sit there and wait for somebody else to do it. You've got to be the answer yourself and get involved, because people often ask me, oh, have you got a candidate for us? And I say, well, you need to stand yourself, because this year, even though there aren't elections everywhere, even though they've been cancelled in 9 counties, there are still over 1,600 seats up for election.
My goodness, wow, that's amazing, isn't it? And I would personally, I got involved at the very beginning because this sense of frustration that you want to do something and you don't know where to turn to get it done. And so, sometimes you're just left with yourself and you think, no, I've got to say something. I've got to get involved. I've got to do something. And that ties in with the Christian perspective as well. You hold your heart in your hands, you pray, and you go forward and let God work. And I think if we all had that attitude, it would be such a different world. So don't rely on other people. Get involved. Read through the manifesto. If you can see our values align with yours, then please, do something. Don't just sit there waiting for someone to come and do it for you, because it's not going to happen. Get involved yourself.
Absolutely. Get involved, and let's work together to restore our nation. Mia, that is a brilliant place to end. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
On Writing, and all the best for your
Thank you very much.
campaign.
Thank you. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Take care.